We are back with our second guest of the day here. I'm thrilled to welcome Gail Fierstein. She is a Chief People Officer at CaaStle. And if you look the way it's spelled, it's kind of interesting because it's clothing as a service.
Yeah.
What is clothing as a service?
So CaaStle works as a technology and services platform end-to-end. We work with fashion brands, retailers to help them monetize their inventory in brand new ways, primarily through rental. So we you think about your normal e-com site, someone goes online, orders, sends it out, and it goes back. With us, we have to bring it back in. We have clean it, we inspect it, we keep it back into the monetization cycle for the brands.
People don't realize how expensive it is to return things, and I found it recently as a consumer, and this like in the last year, where I'll go to process a return, and depending on the price, they'll say, keep it. And I'm like, whoa, I remember the first time that happened, Gail, I was like, I saw this, what? You're hitting camera on me? Like,
yeah.
It's like...
That's because they can't, this is exactly one of the problems.
They can't return it.
Right. One of the problems we're trying to solve is just this for the brands.
It's too expensive when you pay for shipping, and then the processing, and then the manpower to get it back into the inventory flow and the logistics.
So imagine now if you're a consumer and you're on, the Vince site, contemporary brand, and you see a garment you like, a shirt, and you say, you know what, it's even marked down, let's say 30%, but you can't return it, right? Because the retailer, they don't want it. It's too expensive. So CaaStle comes in now and says you can buy it and not return it. You can borrow it.
Yeah, you could borrow
it. You could borrow it for 10 days. And if you like it, you could buy it.
Try it. But the algorithm also, and we're not going to get too deep into that, but I want to focus on people. Because my first question was, how are people not gaming the system if they realize that Target, for example, they do this all the time? And I said to my wife, I'm like, no, there's an algorithm. If you do this more than once, you're going to have to return it. They're not going to let you keep it.
No, I think maybe not, but I think that's exactly what we're talking about with these brands and retailers, right? Is that you don't have to lose that money. And not only that, if it goes into the rental ecosystem, it'll turn out multiple times.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's get in.
And sustainability is also a part of that equation.
What people also don't think about too, it's a really interesting one, the logistics of the trucks and the shipping and the environmental impact on all these returns too. And one of the downfalls obviously of this whole e-commerce is people just buying stuff and returning it super easy. Like, I'm going to get 2 sizes and I'll return the one that doesn't fit. Exactly. So let's get into people leadership.
Yeah.
You've been doing this for a while. How many folks are in your organization?
We have just over 400. It's a really great mix. We're out India. A lot of our used to be primarily engineers. We have many of our different functions now in India. We have our warehouses in a couple of locations, and data scientists. We have really interesting new types of careers for people in retail.
Like what?
Well, you take merch, for example. It's not like the merch program at Macy's, right? Because we're very data-driven. We're working with the algorithms and representing clothing in a totally different way, right? Account management. So people with retail background that want to be in a really tech-driven, data-driven, disrupting environment, we're the place.
How do you, as the top people leader in the organization, is it a challenge managing global remote workforce?
We're hybrid, except for the warehouse, of course. And right now, we're settled in on 3 days a week. It's been a very interesting shift. I think being very global and teams really needing to cross-team collaborate before even the pandemic kind of set the mindset of having certain kind of sensibilities and etiquette, right, of how to work with teams across multiple time zones, peering into each other's homes because, in India it's nighttime there, or it's morning in California and they haven't gone to the office yet. So I think some of those things were kind of there already just by the nature of it, and then got magnified with COVID when we all went remote. And now we're kind of back and shifting, evolving that and saying, we're going to actually, each one of us is going to work differently, right? There's certain things we're going to do in the office together and certain things we're just going to do at home.
What are some of those collaborate, like, because one of the biggest, knocks on the remote work is that collaboration has decreased. And at first there was some great tools out there, then people got fatigued with those. I mean, my personal take, I come from the world before I got into it. I'm a recruiter by trade, podcaster by heart. But before that, I worked in account management at agencies, and for me, there was something special about that vibe in the office, that collaboration, people working together. So when, was it 2020? It's been 4 years already. When everyone just had to go, remote, it was hard for a lot of companies. And some companies, as you mentioned, kind of had some of those cultural elements where it made it a little bit easier. Right. What have you found to kind of be that nice mix of collaboration, where like in person, remote? How do you breed that culture in? How do you trickle it down to the top?
Yeah, I think, well, for role modeling, number one, always, right? So lead by example. So just a really, really simple example that I did right away is that my team is very distributed. I have people in India, I have people in Ohio, California, etc. And I try to do all my touch bases with my directs that are in my location in person. And I shifted my schedule around to say, okay, well, I'm going to...
So you could see them, you could have...
Right, and so look, I'm going to do my interaction with my team in California remotely anyway. Let me do that on Mondays and Fridays when I'm at home. And I'm not giving up that moment and those opportunities to be in the office and interact with my team that it happens to be in the New York office.
Was it a tough decision with leadership? Let me put it another way. Was there pushback from the employees about slowly come back? Like, did you have people that were just like, I don't want to?
We had people that left. And that was okay.
Hard.
Yeah, that was okay.
It's their choice.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of started with, we're opening the office up optional. Health and safety, especially in the early days of coming out of the pandemic, was first and foremost. 2 days a week, 3 days a week. We're always a company that prides ourselves on flexibility and having empathetic leaders and support. And so people just, if they needed to stay home before the pandemic to do something, they did. But what happened, I think, it became such a thing in the zeitgeist, right, that it almost like
it was almost required by companies to be 100% remote. And it's not always the case.
We came back, and I'm finding people are asking for rules now on when they could work from home for personal flexibility, which we didn't have needed before the pandemic. So it kind of put almost had like a negative spotlight on it.
So when can I?
Yeah, but like if you need to, talk to your manager, talk to your team. What's going on that day that you really should be, or if you just have an emergency to deal with, you have agency. You have agency to do it.
Treat people like adults. Let them decide. And I mean, then there's obviously like unique one-off situations. You might have a fantastic employee that moved during the pandemic, like really far away. Yeah. And they want to stay, and then it's a tough balancing act, because like how do you make an exception for one person and not?
It's a slippery slope, and we look at each one individually. We don't have that many that are working 100%.
So let's shift gears. How many recruiters do you have on the team?
How many recruiters?
400-person company, like in the trenches, day-to-day recruiters, coordinators.
5. I got 2 in India and 3 in the U.S.
And what has been across the board a couple of the biggest challenges from a recruiting perspective?
From the first of all, I think the shift, not this year so much, like 2022, 23, as we were starting to come back in the office, and COVID still had its tail. From the health and safety perspective, just getting back on the brand, right, and getting back, being consistent with our candidates as they were coming through the pipeline on what our expectations were. What we've done a lot in the last 18 months is try to increase CaaStle's profile on LinkedIn. Yeah. Because CaaStle is a B2B company. We don't do a lot of brand marketing.
There's an easy way to do it. Sponsoring this podcast.
Yeah, exactly, right?
So we're going to get into that, right? Let's get into branding for a little bit, and I want to talk about the two sides of that. Candidate attraction. Right. Is it always necessary to have a strong presence on LinkedIn and other platforms?
I think it depends, right? It depends how you recruit. I think for some of our roles,
brand recognition helps.
Yeah, I think for some of our roles, though, they're unique. They don't really exist. I was telling you, to have a merch person or an account management who understands data and algorithms enough to work with their, accounts, it's different. So I think, it really helps, obviously, employee referrals. But I think what we've done is we've done employee spotlights up on our LinkedIn page. And
It's a nice way to do it.
and I think it's really helped not only feeling good and proud of working at CaaStle, but I think it helps candidates see people like them at the company.
Relatable. And you don't want to see like the, no, I'm not trying to insult you. They don't want to see the talking heads, the leadership up there.
Of
Be like,
course not.
here's why CaaStle's a great place to work. No. They want to see people
Exactly.
actually, are doing the job. And that's about the candidate attraction and candidate experience. What are some of your best practices that you've implemented as far as candidate attraction to the candidate interview experience and onboarding? Because I found that I work with a lot of clients, they get so far.
I feel like
they fail at onboarding.
Oh my
You're
goodness.
not setting them up for success.
Yes.
I had one client years ago. It took them a full week. They forgot to order the laptop. And the person just like, well, what do you want me to do? I can use my personal computer. Like, no, for security reasons, what the job was, we can't let you. And you're like, what the heck? What do you want me to do for the next week? Like,
so I think
let's talk about
when
what you guys do well.
When my team watches this, they're going to think we actually planned this conversation and this question. Because
we didn't. I promise we didn't.
Because onboarding
I'm not that slick.
Yeah. Actually, onboarding, I'm very proud of onboarding. This is something that we talked about when we were remote during COVID. And we said, you know what? We need to really evaluate the onboarding process because we were onboarding people remotely. And so we needed to do something differently. And the logistics were challenging. You had all of a sudden to ship someone's laptop home, or even offboarding, someone had to bring the ship it back.
Please send this computer back.
Right, please. So we actually worked really, really closely with our colleagues in IT.
Okay.
And we looked at our processes and just looked in the mirror and says, what are the standard operating procedures we need to change? And then we had to, re-change them again when we started coming back in the office.
It's about syncing the team up and we have a candidate, just made an offer, signal IT, and everyone lined up so they're not waiting and being in communication.
Yeah, and I would say anecdotally, when we talk to our new hires, because we do a survey at 30 days and 90 days, and the 30-day survey, a lot of it's focused on the candidate had their experience through the recruiting process, through that day one, day zero, day one. The 90-day survey is starting to focus more on, are you getting what you need from your manager?
Are you being set up for success?
Correct.
Which is the most important thing.
The business partners spend a lot of time coaching managers. We've done, onboarding, training, of course, but it's really making sure that their goals are aligned with the expectations of the job that they came to join.
We could talk for hours about this. I really love talking about the candidate experience. I love talking about employer branding, but we're on a tight podcast schedule today. So what is a people leader keeps you up at night these days?
Keeps it. Right.
Or let me spin it another way. What's a current challenge that you're trying to solve?
Yeah, I think that
Good.
One of our values is do the right thing by people. And we're fortunate to have a CEO, a female CEO, started and founder of the company. We have very proud of our number of women and our diversity. And I think that gives us challenges it's a very broad demographic that we serve from an employee experience and engagement perspective. So how do we're not going to satisfy everyone, and one size doesn't fit all. So how do we come up with what I would say the buffet of things that
I'm in Vegas, so the buffet analogy.
Yes, it's a good one, right? That satisfies enough and has impact on people's work life, professional, and personal lives at the same time.
I love it. Well, Gail, I want to thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast. Where can folks connect? Where can they learn more?
Thank you so much. It's been fun. Thanks.
Where could they connect with you? Where do you like to be engaged with on social?
I'm on LinkedIn, mostly.
Find Gail on social. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.